Hi all, it's Jem here answering your questions. How do you deal with / influence Agile cynics in brackets at work? Deal with Agile cynics. I think my immediate response to this is I don't try and deal with or influence Agile cynics. That's my starting point. When I join an organization, a department or a team, I don't really go out of my way to try and sell the idea of Agile, Scrum or Kanban to people that aren't interested. I prefer to seek out those who appear to be enthusiastic or interested in talking about some of these ideas, and they already may be trying these Agile types of things out. However, there are people, of course, in a transformation, whether the team or the organizational level, who are influential, they have gravitas, they can affect the transformation. They are people that you may need to influence and get on side. So what can you do if they're being quite cynical? This is not a script to follow blow by blow. Rather, these are some of the things that I've tried across my career that sometimes sticks and it may or may not work for you. So consider these tips to try. Tip number 1, concede that Agile is not perfect. It's absolutely fine to do that, okay? You're not going to be arrested by the Agile police. Well-known financial institution, quite a few years back, speaking with a managing director. When I rocked up with our first meeting, he knew I was an Agile coach, and straight away he came with the Agile is good in theory, but in practice it doesn't really work, and it's not really appropriate for what we do here, where there's a lot of risk and a lot of compliance. Now, when I hear this type of talk, my response is not to get into this kind of counter argument. It's rather to concede and say, well, actually, there is truth to this. Agile is not perfect, and it doesn't always work, and it's not always appropriate. That may be a segue for me to then talk a little bit about where we've got simple, complicated, complex, and chaos. So I may drop hints in. Yeah, look, if you know how to plan your project up front, ahead, and you've got all the information that you need, and your experts and your analysis can figure it out, totally makes sense to use an approach whereby you don't need to be adaptive. Conceding that Agile is not perfect and not always appropriate, I think really helps you connect with a person who's being cynical, because they can see that you're able to detach from an idea and look at things objectively. Tip number 2, shift the focus away from Agile. Focus on needs. Quite a well-known e-commerce site I was working with for a little while, and one of the people at the executive level were talking about how Agile can feel a bit like communism. It's a bit wishy-washy and it's all about the people. Again, I shifted away from the term Agile and I started to talk about what they need. All right, we're running this transformation. What do you actually need for this to happen? What are the things that we need to satisfy in these teams to make you feel like we're moving in the right direction? By focusing on needs, again, we objectify the conversation. Are you talking about a lack of motivation? Are you talking about a long integration period? Or when we do integrate things don't happen according to plan? Are we talking about missing dependencies? Are we talking about building the wrong thing? By focusing on what the sponsor or that person or the cynic's needs are, or the team's needs are, we are able to talk about tangible things and not get caught up in this kind of philosophical war over different approaches to change. Tip number 3, keep it empirical. Now, this is a little bit sneaky because Agile, Kanban, Scrum, XP, all of these ideas have a lot of empiricism baked in, which is learning by doing. But by keeping it empirical, what I mean by this is sharing with that person that your approach is about using an evidence-based way of making decisions. By doing this, we shift the focus away from Agile again, and we're using language which might be a little bit more accommodating for people that can be cynical with Agile. When I talk about evidence-based management or empiricism, and I talk about how we want to make sense of what we're doing by looking at what happens and making new decisions to mitigate risk, that seems to chime quite well with cynics. Because again, we're getting past the fluff. Tip 4, show your vulnerability. When people are talking about their disdain for Agile or a previous experience of somebody trying to force Agile and it wasn't working in that situation, if you have been that person where you've been a bit extreme in your approach, put your hands up to it. I often do that in a conversation. I'll say, yep, been there, done that. I've used that kind of binary approach whereby, labeling projects as bad or having teams which aren't cross-functional as bad. Speak about it, touch on it. Showing that vulnerability can really go a long way in building a connection and developing trust early with that person. Tip number 5, share your wins. You may have seen success with a new way of working in your organization or a team, and you think a cynic won't care. But you know what? Maybe you want to CC him in that email. Maybe you want to pass it on to him in the corridor. Maybe you want to continue inviting them to that guild or that forum that they don't come to. Keep an open mind and an open heart, and make sure that you do a good job of giving visibility of success. So there you have it, guys. 5 tips. I hope that was useful. More to come. Thanks.